First and foremost, I was completely in character. I ended up doing some like, my name is this and this is the Hanukkah tree topper. I got to tell you about this amazing thing. But as I'm going and, the whole room's looking at me like I'm crazy, I'm spitting out my numbers. I'm spitting out my gross margin. I'm spitting out my distribution and all these things. So a minute and a half, and then I stop and I just go, thank you very much. And I start walking away. It was the confidence, right? And they're like, wait, come back. And, it was the beginning of what then was about a 6-month process before I finally got onto the carpet.
Let's go.
Business and deal-making have been in my next guest's blood since he was a teenager growing up in LA. But his real passion back then was theater. Flash forward a couple of decades, and his interests and passions combined to put him center stage on Shark Tank, where he dazzled the judges, not only with his clever product and pitch, but also with his hustle and chutzpah. Welcome back to This Magic Life. I am your host, Andrea Koppel. But before I introduce you to my next guest, I want to make sure you've subscribed to the This Magic Life YouTube channel, or if you're listening to this episode, make sure to rate and review it on Apple Podcasts. And lastly, I want to invite you to sign up for the Dose of Magic newsletter. It showcases each week's inspiring guest and offers ideas and insights that you can put into practice right now to invite more magic and serendipity into your life. You can find all the deets and the links in the description for this episode. Today's guest is someone whose career journey has been infused with serendipity and entrepreneurial magic. Morri Chowaiki is someone who is a powerhouse in the world of business development and strategic partnerships. 12 years ago, back in 2012, he was a contestant on the hugely popular reality show known as Shark Tank, an opportunity he parlayed into the biggest opportunity, the biggest career move of his life. As you'll hear, Morri's career journey included risk-taking, hard work, and seeing opportunities while others were operating in autopilot. Get ready for what is sure to be an inspiring and motivating conversation to help you believe in the magic that awaits you. Morri, welcome to This Magic Life.
Wow. I'm going to hire you to do my eulogy.
Oh, I don't know if I like that, Morri. I'm older than you are, so I think I'm going to be predeceasing you. Maybe I should invite you to do my eulogy.
That was an amazing intro. I'm reeling. That was fantastic. Thank you. And so much, really appreciate you having me on today. It's great to see you again.
Great to see you again. You went to UC San Diego and you majored in not business, theater. Yep. Did you know what you were going to do with that degree when you graduated?
Heck no. I hoped, I always loved performance. I always loved, and, it's definitely crossed over into my world of selling and strategic partnership and presentation. I always loved, getting an emotion, a reaction out of the other side. And I really thought I was going to pursue a career in it. And I did for a little bit. But I had no idea.
Did you?
I did.
So right when you graduated?
Yeah. So I was a musical theater guy. I was always a character actor. I could do probably, 25 different dialects and sound all different ages and all kinds of stuff. So when you're in, the world of university theater, there's only people that are, 18 to 20 years old to do these parts, regardless of whether they're 75-year-old men or 18-year-old boys. So, I was cast as a lot of different characters that I got to play regardless of my age. So, when I graduated in 94 and moved to LA to, pursue this career in film, I ended up being very disappointed because now it mattered how I looked. I was only getting auditions and cast as, the young brother, the stockbroker, the lawyer, the young, law student. And I was bored senseless because I was a character actor. So I actually found through nepotism and connection, the world of animation voiceover. And I actually pursued that professionally. I did cartoon voices professionally for about 3 years.
Any characters or cartoons that we know of?
Yeah, I mean, I did a feature film called The Road to El Dorado, City of Gold that starred Kevin Kline and Edward James Olmos. I did Jackie Chan, an X-Men bit, and it was really fantastic. And then, God bless his heart, Robin Williams screwed it up for all of us because there was a small group of voiceover actors that were, kind of the stuntmen of voiceover that weren't doing the straight parts, that were doing, the more character roles. And we were getting paid a lot to do it. And then Robin Williams comes out and slays the genie on Aladdin. And every celebrity in the world says, oh, wait, I don't have to get hair and makeup and I can still make money. So it just became a
Right.
lot harder, which is why eventually I leaned towards business.
So how did you make that pivot? Because I'm guessing you had maybe people in your life, family members or whatnot, who are like, Morri, what the hell were you doing studying musical theater? You should have majored in business or in something more practical.
For sure. And, especially my background, I grew up very, very lucky to be in, my family, my father was extremely successful. I grew up, with a very privileged life. And everything was great until I hit 17 years old. I was in college for about 3 weeks and I got the call that changed everything. My dad completely lost his fortune at age 65. And so, I knew at that moment, everything had to change. And, that's when the work ethic that he instilled in me really kicked in because, I got up every morning at 4 a.m. to work in restaurants to make, get my way through school and, do that. And so when, I moved to LA and trying to figure out what I was going to do, I was still working, which was good. I was working in restaurants. I mean, I had no money to support me. I had to do my own thing. And then, as the auditions started getting slower and as the bookings started getting slower, I needed to work more. And I got very lucky. A friend of my brother's calls me up, and, this is the summer of 1994. Actually, no, probably fall of 1994. And he calls me up and he says, hey, man, I heard from your brother you might be looking for some extra work. I said, yeah. He says, listen, I just started an e-commerce company and I might need some help. I go, what's e-commerce? And he said, oh, I'm selling vitamins over the computer. I'm like, what? And he says, yeah, you good with computers? I said, yeah, actually, I've always tinkered in them.
Was that true?
Yeah. I started with a Commodore VIC-20 and Apple IIe. I was always, one of the best class I ever took in high school was a typing class, and I could type, 100 words a minute. And so he's like, I might need some like data entry and just, packing boxes and stuff like that. Long story short, we started, 2 guys in a little tiny garage with 100 products. 4 years later, sold the company. We were the first health store on Prodigy, CompuServe, and AOL. We ended up with 25,000 SKUs. I ended up being one of the principals in the company. And we went from doing 5 orders a day to 1,000 orders a day and exited before the bust in 99. It was a roller coaster like you can't believe.
You said you got very lucky, Morri. What do you think has been behind some of the luck, some of the serendipity that you've attracted in your life?
There's a saying, in Hebrew, mazel tov, right? And that is good luck. I had it once explained to me that the word mazel in Hebrew, is made up of 3, consonants, the M, the Z, and the L, and then there's vowels. And each of the letters has a specific meaning. together the word has, more of a larger meaning. And so what was explained to me was the M had something to do with the symbolism of a house or a building, the Z, some sort of symbolism to a watch or a clock, and the L, a mouth. So what's the definition of luck? Being at the right time, right? Right place, the building, the watch, but that's not enough. You got to open your mouth. And so for me, that's been very true. I've been very, very fortunate to be in situations. My father, was much older. He had me when he was in his 50s. But growing up, he always, put me in situations where I had mentors before I even knew what mentors were. He always said, surround yourself with older people, people that you aspire to be like. Be respectful to them, do favors for them, whatever it is. And so, I've been very fortunate to be in great situations. But I think part of what theater taught me is you can't wimp out. You got to go for it. And no matter how many times that door gets smashed in your face, or how many times somebody laughs at you, or how many times somebody thinks you're crazy, every once in a while magic happens. And I think that, listen, I could go a little bit more, esoteric and say, oh yeah, I give and karma's good and blah, blah, blah. And that's true. I really try to lead my life with giving, and that's worked for me very well. But I think a lot of it just has to do with having the chutzpah.
Yes, and take action.
But in how do I put this? In a lovable way. I think there's a fine line between being tenacious and likable to tenacious and really annoying. People do business with people they like. Doesn't matter how good your books are. Do I actually want to talk to you today? Do I want to spend the next years of my life working 8 hours a day with you? That's what it comes down to.
100%. Could not agree more. So the name of the company that you and your brother's friend created was Health and Vitamin Express, and you worked there for about 5 years before your
Correct.
exit, which congratulations. And you moved to, I think it was, if I'm going to pronounce it correctly, Liner Health Products.
Correct.
Liner. And you were the senior director of national accounts, and you did that for 9 years. You have now been in sales, in effect, for almost the entirety of your adult life. Can you talk a bit, Morri, about what qualities you think are essential for someone to excel in sales?
So I think, first of all, I'll give you an example. When I went to work for that large vitamin company, Liner Health Products, in 99, I didn't know a damn thing about corporate structure. And this was the biggest vitamin manufacturer in the US, doing $1.5 billion in revenue. And because of my experience in the e-commerce vitamin world, they brought me in to run their e-commerce division. I was 25 years old at the time, 26. I was a tech guy. I had no formal business training. And I walked into, the equivalent of Pfizer, suits and ties, 1,500 people in an organization, decks, this, that. I had no clue. But what I had was adaptability. And what I had was a willingness to learn and just not to give up. So, as far as exceeding, and which I did, I exceeded sales budgets. I was very successful there. And I learned, it's almost like the fake it till you make it. You have to, first of all, be able to get along with different people. I had my mentor and the person I directly reported to was an ex executive at ConAgra. He was probably more than double my age, very different culturally, very different perspective of, politics. And we were the complete opposite, right? And maybe this was the theater background that helped me. I've always been able to have the gift of gab and the gift of relating to somebody That's completely on the opposite spectrum of who I am. And when it comes to sales, and like I said, I was doing business development and partnerships. I mean, I was working on big deals, 7-figure deals, 25 million, 100 million deals. That's not just let me pick up the phone, read from a script, and get an order and go to the next one. That is a long, 6-month, 1-year sales cycle. And it's knowing the back end as well as the front end. So this is an important point. When I started at this vitamin company, I had come off working 5 years selling vitamins online, but I didn't know anything about manufacturing, zero. Now I'm going to work for the largest vitamin manufacturing company there is, and I'm the expert. You know what the first thing I did was when I got there? I asked my senior VP, hey, can I go spend a week at the manufacturing facility? He's like, what the hell you want to do that for? I said, I need to learn. I need to learn every single step of how that 4,000 bag of powder that it starts as gets into that little bottle in a pill this big. Because I have to be the expert. I have to know what I'm talking about. There are a lot of straight salespeople who get a deck, who get a sell sheet and just go out and sell it, but they don't take the time to learn the back end. Now, what did learning the back end do for me? 2 things. First of all, it gave me all the education I ever needed so that in the future, when I was working with massive clients like Walmart and Costco, they knew they could come to me and I would get the question answered. Even if I didn't know, I would get it answered. And I had a pretty good understanding of it. Again, no formal training in this at all. But what was the other thing that it did for me? Relationship. In sales, in strategic partnership, it's all about relationship. And sometimes and even negotiation. But what's more important sometimes than the relationship with your potential customer is the internal relationships you have at your company. Here I am, the slick sales guy, who works in the nice office, driving 30 minutes to the shittier office, excuse my French, to sit with the guy in manufacturing who is in his cubicle, is, borderline Asperger's, who has grooming issues, really thick glasses, who never gets a visitor, who's looking at me like, what the hell are you doing here? And I spent a week with him. And I said, teach me everything. Well, how did that pay off? 2 years later, when I needed something for my client and I was competing with another big order, I picked up the phone, called this guy, he got it right through. And I got my deal. So persistence, enjoyment. You got to love what you do because people know if you don't, being pleasant. But working on all relationships, because at the end of the day, people do business with people, not companies, with people. And, tenacity and just not giving up. The other thing, too, that's important is it's very easy to make an introduction. It's very easy to meet somebody. But that follow-up, especially in the corporate world, that gets $1 to transfer from one account to the other, stacks of paperwork, follow-up, not forgetting something, it's a process. And being able to know, and I attribute a lot of that to my time at the e-commerce company, going from a company of 2 people to 25 and doing everything, back end, front end, customer service, is I knew the whole cycle. And I think that's really, really important, even if you have a role that's only doing one thing down the line.
Great points. And I hope that our audience takes away another great example that you're showing there, Morri, and that is the transferability of skills. It doesn't matter what you study in school. And the fact that you studied theater on a piece of paper would not seem to be aligned with sales. Now, most people don't study sales as an undergrad, but they would think if they were to go into sales, business, right? And the fact is, this happened by accident, right? I mean, you were gonna, whether it was gonna be on Broadway or movies, film, or character actor or voiceover actor, that was the direction that you were heading in. And out of the blue, you get a call from your brother's friend, and then you took action on it. And because you took action, you uncovered a whole type of career that you had never even considered. So, as one step leads to another, You were a VP at a big software company, and I guess the holidays were approaching, and you and your then wife had an idea.
Yeah.
An idea for a product. How did that happen, Morri?
That was an interesting one for sure. So, I'm Jewish. My ex-wife, who I respect and care for, she's one of the strategic partners in my life, and she's an incredible mother, and we're still friends, which is great. She grew up with a Greek Orthodox father and a Jewish mother, so not a lot of religion, but they celebrated the holidays. For years and years, she wanted to put up a Christmas tree in the home, and I was like, no effing way. No, not in my home. Well, usually when you tell a woman no, something happens. So about 7, 8 years into our marriage, she said, I got to do it. I said, fine, but just don't go overboard. Like if I walk into my living room and baby Jesus is in a little thing, we're going to have issues. So one day she says, all right, I'm going to go out shopping. And, she came back. We had little ones at the time, and she wanted to, bring this tradition that she grew up with into our home. And I hear all this clamoring downstairs, and she says, don't come downstairs until I call you. And so I walk downstairs, and on our dining room table is about a 3-foot tall Christmas tree, all decorated in blue and silver, garland and balls and things like that. And there's menorahs and dreidels all over the place, and gifts wrapped with Hanukkah paper and Christmas paper, dreidels and cookies. I mean, it was like Christmaka on steroids, right? And on the top of the Christmas tree was a 5-pointed star, like a regular, Star of Bethlehem. And I literally made a joke. I said, couldn't you at least find a Jewish star to put on top of the tree? And she said, I looked for one actually, and I couldn't find one. And so this is like 2006, something like that. And I said, oh, come on. There's got to be one out there. Let me get online and look for one. And I searched and I searched and I searched. It didn't exist. There were people that had made some out of popsicle sticks and, tinfoil and stuff like that, but an actual product on the market didn't exist. And that's when the idea popped into my head.
And there are plenty of ideas that people have, Morri. I've had lots of them, and I didn't act on it. What was it about the Hanukkah tree topper that you decided, I'm actually gonna bring this product to life?
The time from idea to the time that I actually had a product was probably 3 years. The first thing that really made me go to the next step was I put my consumer products hat on. Remember, the previous experience helped forge my future.
You mean understanding the way that products are developed?
Yeah.
Yes.
And I started looking into the market, and I read an incredible statistic. There was a study that was done by some Jewish national organization, and it was probably negative to them, but the findings were that in the last 15 years at the time, 50% of Jewish people were married to somebody of another faith, and 90% of the other faith was Christian or Catholic. That's a huge number. Then I started to extrapolate, okay, how many Jews are there? And at the end of the day, I worked backwards and found out that there was something like 1.3 million households in the US that were like mine. One Jew, one Christian. And I said, there's a market. At the same time, there was a show called The OC that was on, and they did a Christmaka episode and had this little yarmulke clause. It was a little yarmulke with a little Santa thing. And that was really popular. And so that was the first step to say, I think there might be something here. I ended up calling one of my previous coworkers from the big company who was an incredible marketer. I ended up calling one of my other coworkers that was an incredible intellectual property attorney, because I didn't want to do this thing small. If I was going to do it, I wanted to know, could I actually patent this thing? Could I be the only guy? Can I come up with a beautiful rendering of this? I got it, and so I And that is a great example of how sometimes the internal pitch is more important than the external one. I had no money to start this thing up. I had no money for, molds and graphics and lawyers and all this thing. So I had to convince two incredibly amazing, talented professionals to come on board for Sweat. Here's some equity. Do you believe in this idea? If so, of course, I'll cover your costs, but, I need you to waive your fees. And I got two incredible professionals to join my team and help me build out all the graphics that I needed, the sell sheets, the renderings, everything, as well as the patent and the trademark, which the patent was eventually granted.
So let's fast forward.
Sure.
I know that you end up actually finding a factory in China to produce this, and you end up selling it on the internet, and it ended up losing you money because of, unfortunately, some problems that occurred along the way. But meantime, somebody tells you or you learn about a show called Shark Tank.
So 2011, season 4, I decided that I was going to try out for the show. At this point in time, I had nothing but online sales, but it really did well online. It became like the number one best-selling item on Amazon out of 5,000 Hanukkah gifts. I think the 30th best-selling ornament out of 300,000 ornaments. I mean, it was incredible.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
And because of my e-commerce skills from before, I really knew how to do this, right? And so I try out for the show. There's 2 ways to audition. You can either audition in person or online. And you go to the next step by having to do what's called a video. And you do a longer pitch. And so I ended up auditioning for season 4, got all the way to the video round, and then got cut. And they said, we're sorry, maybe come back when you have a little bit more in business. So that next year, I busted my ass. I got it into Home Depot, Walmart, Bed Bath & Beyond, and Toys R Us all by myself. And I'll tell you something, one of the most incredible moments that I'll never forget in my life, after being in 1,000,001 boardrooms when I was at that company for 10 years in the software company, to sit in the corporate headquarters of Bed Bath & Beyond by myself pitching my product, that was a cool moment, man. That was such a cool moment. So I got it into all those different channels, and then season 5 rolls around, and I find out that they are auditioning in person in LA. I was living in San Diego, as I am now. And I said to my then wife, I think I'm going to go for it again. She's like, what's wrong with you? You were so heartbroken last time. Like, you got all the way forward and then they cut you and you were miserable for a week. You're going to put yourself through that again? I go, if I don't try, I'm never going to live it down. And I said, I got to do it in person. I can't do this online shit anymore. And so they said, we only accept 500 auditions. Come early. The audition started at 10. I was in Burbank sitting on a cold sidewalk at 3 a.m. and I was number 150 in line. And then I decided that the last time I was too straight. Like, I didn't have enough fun with it. This time I said, I'm going all in, and I'm using my background again.
Character actor.
Exactly. And the way that they do it is you wait in this long, long line. You get to go in with 15 other people, and they have 15 tables in this big room with 2 people behind each table. And you get your moment in front of one of those tables.
So give us a little window into what you did, Morri. Can you remember?
Oh, yeah. I mean, first and foremost, I was completely in character, right? I ended up doing some like, my name is this and this is the Hanukkah tree topper. I got to tell you about this amazing thing. But as I'm going and, the whole room's looking at me like I'm crazy, I'm spitting out my numbers. I'm spitting out my gross margin. I'm spitting out my distribution and all these things. So a minute and a half, and then I stop and I just go, thank you very much. And I start walking away. It was the confidence, right? And they're like, wait. hey, come back. And, it was the beginning of what then was about a 6-month process before I finally got onto the carpet.
Yeah, it's crazy because you said, break down the numbers for us again. How many people are going out for a typical season?
Every season starts with about 50,000 participants. From the 50,000 that audition either in person or online, they pick approximately 2,500 to do the video audition, which is a longer, like 5-6 minute piece. From there, they pick about 900 to do what's called pre-pitch, which means they go to the Sony studios in LA. They set up their whole background. Everything is done as if they were actually pitching to the Sharks, but they pitch to producers. From the 900, they pick about 200 to come back and film. And from the 200, only about 120 actually air. So there's a 160 out of 50,000 chance. And a lot of people film, sometimes even make a deal, but then don't even air. So if you get to air on that show, that's a great lottery ticket right there.
And you got the Willy Wonka golden ticket, didn't you?
Well, I don't know. I mean,
your episode aired.
Yeah, it aired.
And I actually think, yes, I want you to talk about that, but I listened to that other interview that you gave recently, and you said that your goal, maybe in the back of your mind, was less about getting investment from the Sharks and more about connecting with a shark or two and forging a relationship with them.
Yeah, I had the luxury of this business that I was pitching, was my side hustle. I was still working a full-time job. And I think that's very important in any entrepreneur's life. Don't go all in until you can, don't sleep, but have a side hustle. And, so I went in, and it wasn't in the background of my mind, Andrea. It was in the foreground. I didn't, with all due respect, I didn't care about getting funding for a tree topper. If I had the opportunity to be in front of one of those people, I wanted to take that to the next level. They say you can't hit a target you can't see. That was my target. That was my mood board. That was everything. So, and I thought I was going to fail. I got up there, and what people don't know is you see about 8 minutes on Shark Tank, right? Of every pitch. Those pitches on the short side go 20 minutes. On the long side could go 2 hours. Mine was about an hour and a half. And you get no piece of paper. You get no charts. You get no calculator. Everything's got to be right here. And you got to be on. And I got grilled, man. I got grilled hard for an hour and a half. And basically the feedback was all the same. That's your only product? That's the whole business? I mean, it's beautiful and the message is great, but it sells once to like 0.1% of the population, and you buy it once, you don't get to buy it again. It's not an investable business. Robert goes out. Lori goes out. Mark goes out. Kevin goes out. There's Daymond. And in a million years, he was never my first choice. I figured, okay, Mark's Jewish. He probably could relate. Lori's got the whole retail QVC thing. Kevin, Robert, I don't know. But when Daymond was left on that panel, I was like, pull up the car, we're done. But then it happened.
What happened?
He comes out and says, I've been sitting here listening, and like everybody else here, I think you're too good of a business person for this business. Is this your only business? And I explained it. And he said, okay. He said, a lot of people don't know this, but my father left my mother and I when I was 10 years old, never saw my father again. And she was a single mom, and I'm an only child. She started dating a Jewish man after that, and he was essentially my stepfather. I really like the message. I like you. My business partners at FUBU for 25 years have been Jewish. He says, I'm going to take a flyer on you. I'm going to make you an offer. I then did the dramatics of kind of countering and all this type of stuff. But in my mind, dude, I would have given that guy 100% of my company for nothing. And we ended up settling on a deal. And shook his hand, gave him a hug, put a little blue Santa hat on his head, and walked out.
But this is when the story starts getting really interesting.
You know, people think you kind of walk out with a bag of money. You don't. Plus, you film months before it airs, right? You know, you meet him on that stage, but you don't get to talk to him again, right? And so, you know, you get introduced to his team, and, you know, at first they're kind of like, listen, you know, Daymond's not sure he really wants to be in this business. Would you be open to licensing? I go, sure, I don't care. And, you know, a few months went by and I went about doing my thing, you know, working full time. And then about 3 months later, about a week or two before my episode was going to air, I flew to New York for another meeting that I had, and I called the licensing person on his team. I said, hey, I'm in town. Would love to meet up. Actually, Daymond's in the office. He'd like to meet with you. Oh my God, right? So where are we going? Empire State Building. He owns the entire 67th floor of the Empire State Building. I show up. There's a big FUBU sign on the door. I walk in. His receptionist is a 250-pound dude that looks like he could like swallow me. And I'm thinking to myself, like, where the hell am I, right? And I go into the conference room, this big like mahogany desk, and he sits down and we have the most beautiful conversation for like an hour and a half, just getting to know each other. That was it. And at the end of the conversation, he says to me, Morri, I'm going to be honest with you. This is not a business for me. He said, if you're open to it, I'll help you license it. I'll help you with the attorney. I'll help you with the licensing agent. I'll help you with the contracts. I won't charge anything. And whatever royalty we get for you, you keep the royalty. And we just see what happens. So he actually never gave me the money. He ended up helping me license it. We licensed it to an incredible company called the Kurt S. Adler Company. And they're like one of the biggest Christmas wholesalers out there. And to this day, 12 years later, I still get a check every quarter for 10% of sales for doing nothing. Now, that was it. So there was nothing else to do with Daymond. He didn't offer me any sort of work. He said, all right, just, you know, you seem cool. You know, here's my number. Don't abuse it. And let's just see what happens. From that point to what actually happened next took about 1 year. And what happened next was, you know, I was doing little favors for him whenever I could. He ended up wanting, he invested in a new beverage company. I said, hey, can I help you get that into retail? He says, don't you make tree toppers? I go, I do other things. And he said, all right. And I got it in and I never asked for anything. He said, are you sure you don't want? No. He asked me for advice on this other business. I said, hey, you want me to write you up a business plan? He says, I thought you made tree choppers. I'm like, oh, here we go again. So it took a long time to get him to see, you know, the other things that I had done in my career and know that I was something more than a guy with a Santa hat selling tree toppers. But then what happened, which really changed the game for me, was people may not know he's one of the most sought after keynote speakers in the world. He's probably number 5 on the world stage and number 2 in the US. And he gets paid, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars every time he does it and speaks for every Fortune, 100 company you can think of. He invited me to one of his keynotes and he does this incredible like one-man play. It's incredibly engaging. And I think it was like Johnson & Johnson. And I sat there watching him on stage and I was mesmerized. 3,000 people in the audience are going nuts. What am I looking at? I'm looking at the front row. CEO, COO, CMO, CTO of a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate. He gets off stage, shakes a hand, kisses a baby, and leaves. And I'm going, what's going on there? He said, what do you mean? I said, you have a marketing firm. Like, you want to be the face of companies. Like, who's fostering these relationships? No, I'm not into that kind of stuff. I said, really? He said, yeah, I don't like to be salesy. I said, Daymond, could I possibly take a shot at this? He goes, what do you mean? I said, let me, come with you to a couple of these things, see what I can do. He says, don't you sell tree toppers? I'm like, Jesus, what are the tree toppers? He says, don't you have a job? I go, I do. Let me worry about that. And so I did. I took a big risk. I moonlighted for 6 months and traveled with Daymond John while he was doing speaking engagements And my job while he was up on stage was forming relationships and bonds with that front row at every single event. 6 months go by. My wife says I'm going to get fired from my job because, he's posting me on social media. My CEO is finding me, this and that. I was working remotely and I was killing my number at the software company. So I had a little bit of flexibility, but it was a big risk, very big risk. 6 months go by and this is the conversation. He pulls me aside, he sits me down and he says, Morri, I don't understand you. Okay. He says, man, you annoy the living shit out of me. Okay, where's this going? And then he says, but in the last 6 months, you have brought in more incremental revenue to my organization than 40 people have in the last 4 years. So go quit your goddamn job and get over here.
Wow.
And that was approximately 10 years ago. And I've been with him ever since.
Do you ever think, Morri, about what would have happened if when you went to New York years before for another business trip, and if you'd called to check in with Daymond's one of his staffers, and Daymond hadn't been in the office, or if you hadn't called to check in?
Yeah, I mean,
do you see that as like a serendipitous moment for you? Yet another
100%.
one?
But I will tell you that if it didn't happen then, it would have happened again. I would have flown out. I've done crazy stuff in my career. I mean, when I was manufacturing my product, I flew to China and I was there for 13 hours to meet with Home Depot. I walked in there like, you did not have to fly to this meeting. I go, yeah, I did. You can't underestimate the power of effort and the power of
extra effort.
Extra effort, that puts you in the room before anybody else, that puts you on the curb, that puts you in the room shouting and screaming and differentiating yourself in sales or in life. You got to be different. But yeah, that moment was everything, and when I went to the speaking engagement, like 50 other people had done in his Shark Tank process. I was the only guy that ever said, let me do this. And I'm the only guy in 16 years of Shark Tank history for all the sharks that has ever worked both sides and done full circle. And I still go every single year. And now I get the honor of helping the other people that he makes deals with find homes for their products. So, entrepreneurs and wantrepreneurs all have ideas in the shower. It's the entrepreneur that gets out and, does the hard work, that doesn't sleep, that loses relationships over it, that doesn't get to see their kids as much. I just don't know how to do anything else. There's no vacation for me. There's no such thing. I'm always on because it's what I love to do. It's in my blood.
If you were a college student today, Morri, and wondering about how to break into your dream company, what advice would you give them?
I can't stress enough. Surround yourself with like-minded people and offer to help them. Giving of yourself should be thought of as a deposit that you put into a retirement account. Don't ever wonder or expect a certain return. You'll get a return. You may not know when, you may not know how, but lead with that giving because that's what ends up being real value in the future at some point in a strategic partnership. So, I would say, it's more about interning and more about, if you get an opportunity to spend time with somebody that you want to be like by being patient and slowly doing things for them, knowing the intuition of when you're getting a little overbearing or annoying and being able to kind of pull back. That's what it comes down to. It's don't be afraid and pick up the damn phone. The emails and the texts are great, but if you really want to interact with somebody, get on a Zoom, pick up the phone and call. Don't be lazy because there's 25 other people that want to be where you are. In my case, there was 59,000 other people that wanted to be where I was. And I could have said, oh shoot, I didn't get on the first season. I'm not going to try for the second one. Where would that have gotten me?
It certainly wouldn't have gotten you the partnership that you have with Daymond today. That's for sure. So I have two final questions that I try to ask all my guests, Morri. The first one is, what can our audience do right now to become more magical, to experience more serendipities in their life?
I think it really comes down to having a very clearly defined goal in your mind, being extremely, extremely stubborn about achieving that goal, but being very flexible on the steps of how you get there. Entrepreneurs, successful people fall on their face 9 times out of 10. Having a very specific goal in mind, knowing that you want to accomplish it, and just not giving up is not overrated. I mean, it is everything. And then the other part of it too is, and it's a hard one because there are a lot of people out there that don't have the luxury of doing work that they love because they have to make bills. And I'm not saying, not do that, but I worked a lot of jobs. Okay, so when my dad lost everything when I was 17, I went into fear mode. And every job I did was about the money because I never, ever, ever wanted to feel like that again. I mean, we went from rich to poor in a day. It wasn't until I did this tree topper. That was the first thing I ever did that I didn't care about the money. I just did it because it was fun and it solved a problem and it made people feel good. Look where that got me. So, I only had one job in my entire life that I hated and it lasted a week. Don't do what you don't love. Find something that you actually want to get up out of bed and do, because that's success. The dollars and the cents change. The happiness is the real value.
Follow your interests.
100%. 100%.
Looking back on your career journey thus far, what do you think has been the secret to the magic and serendipity that you've experienced?
Leading without expectation. When anybody has ever asked me, hey, can I have that intro? Can I have this? I mean, there's certain times where I'll say, okay, let's work out something. But most of the time it's, yeah, sure, no problem. Especially if it's somebody that I think down the road could be a great partner. Just do it. Just do it. And don't ask for anything in return. Just give, because like I said before, that's a donation into an investment account that you can't even fathom what the return is going to be on. So that's probably been my secret, is just giving, and the other part of it too is just have fun and be happy and pleasant. People love working with people that are happy and pleasant, and develop relationships. That's so important. And it's more than just let's hang out. It's take the time to learn about somebody's life, before the call goes into business, get to know you. Tell me about yourself.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I would add, I think the fact that you have an incredible work ethic.
Yeah.
Like you're like that quintessential dog with a bone. The minute it's in your teeth, you're not going to let go.
You remember Charlotte's Web?
Yes.
Remember Templeton the rat?
I had forgotten about him, but I heard you mention him in the last interview and it reminded me. So
Templeton was the little character who found that half-eaten corn dog at the end of the carnival under the trash can after he had to move it away and, fight 2 cats for it. My nickname from Daymond is Templeton. I find that corn dog wherever I go. And I don't let go.
Yum. Yeah. Gotta like corn dogs. Morri, I want to thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
For coming on this magic life. And I want to wish you many, many more magical moments to come.
The same goes for you. And I really appreciate, how we met and how wonderful our relationship turned. This is a perfect example. we'll probably be doing, millions in business in the next 2 years on something that hasn't even been invented yet. So let's keep in touch.
Let's go.
Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of This Magic Life. Our mission is to inspire you to stop fearing your future and start getting excited about all the serendipitous and magical opportunities that await you. Make sure to subscribe to This Magic Life on YouTube so you don't miss any new episodes. And for on-the-go listening, give us a follow wherever you like to listen to your podcasts. We absolutely love to get feedback from the This Magic Life community, so make sure to drop us a comment on YouTube or a 5-star review on Apple. And you can always find me on LinkedIn at Andrea Koppel, aka the Career Magic Maker. I can't wait to see you soon.